Our final speaker this evening is Alicia Nelson. Alicia is a senior at MSUM studying social work and political science with a minor in leadership studies. During her 4 years as a Dragon, she has held several student leadership positions, including student orientation counselor, news director at KMSC Dragon Radio, and vice president of Student Senate. Currently, she is a Dragon ambassador and treasurer of Student Senate. She is passionate for social justice and mental health, and she is currently putting these passions to work as an intern for YWCA Cass Clay and West Fargo Eats. Following her graduation from MSUM this spring, Alicia plans to pursue a master's degree in social work and eventually become a licensed clinical social worker, allowing her to provide counseling services to clients. As a note, Alicia's talk will include a brief mention of self-harm. If this is troubling to you, please use your best judgment and feel free to take any measures necessary to ensure your own comfort. As a reminder, MSUM has counseling services available on campus for students, and there are many mental health providers in our community. Now, let's bring Alicia to the stage. Please give her a warm welcome.
I have a question for you. Can identity be changed? Whoops. Okay. Maybe if I stop pressing it. Let's see. Oh no. There we go. All right. Can identity be changed? I'm a firm believer that identity is changing constantly. And tonight, I plan to make you all believers too. Everyone here probably saw some great evidence of this on their social media pages this January. Who here is familiar with the 10-year challenge? Great. For those of you that aren't, I've asked some friends to help me put together some examples. This is Jess Mueller, 10 years ago, and Jess Mueller, our current student body president. Some of you might know Annie Wood, who had a hand in putting this event together tonight. Here's Annie Wood 10 years ago, in some not-so-familiar regalia. And Annie Wood from this past summer. As you can see from these examples, one aspect in which our identity changes is through our appearance. Maybe our style changes, our skin shows signs of aging. We grow and even sometimes shrink. Maybe we dye our hair or get tattoos or piercings. All of these changes impact our identities, who we see ourselves as and who others determine us to be. But identity can change in many other ways too. To explain why I think the fluidity of identity is invaluable, I'd like to tell you a story. This is me 10 years ago. As the fifth of 6 children, I felt like nothing about me was uniquely my own. Family, friends, and relatives would compare me to my dad, my mom, my older siblings, my younger brother, and even my cousins at times. I felt that no matter the choices I made or the way I behaved, I would be locked into this box of being just like someone else. There was no space for me to be an individual. It was about this time that I started to think of identity as this predetermined thing. I felt like every person just turned into some combination of their parents or family members with no power to change it. Now for me, this was an incredibly frightening idea. My parents had gotten divorced when I was 8 years old, and their divorce was far from what you could call amicable. So I grew up hearing my parents blame each other, call each other names, and tell scary stories where the monsters were each other. Needless to say, I was not excited for who I would grow up to be. On top of this, I went through a combination of bullying and verbal abuse as a child, which left me with dwindling self-worth, low self-esteem, and a litany of negative traits I ascribed to myself. I felt lost and like I had no control over my life. From my perspective, I was at a low point with nowhere to go but down. I struggled a lot with feeling like I had no value or purpose, feeling like I would become this intangible idea of a bad person and there was nothing that I could do to stop it. I was furious with my parents, like many teenagers are, but also with myself for embodying everything that I hated about them. I had so much rage and hurt inside myself that I felt the need to get it out somehow, to physically manifest this pain in some way. So, like about 5 to 10% of teenagers in Western countries, I turned to self-injurious behaviors. This quickly landed me in a psychiatric hospital intake room. And while I didn't end up staying at the hospital then, this event was the catalyst for a string of therapists and mental health hospitals I would be in throughout my adolescence. Finally, I started seeing a therapist who I truly connected with. She helped me feel heard in a way I had never experienced and helped me realize that I had power over my identity. But what does it mean to take charge of your own identity? Before I go on, I have another question for you, and I'd like you to write this one down on a piece of paper, in your phone, or wherever is convenient. So here's my question. Who are you? Start with I am, and finish a short statement. Great. Hopefully you've got something down. Maybe some of you are secure in the identity you've just written down. Or maybe some of you are attending this event tonight in hopes that you can understand the meaning of identity a bit better and start to get a better sense of your own. Wherever you're at in your identity journey right now, I'm willing to bet your answer to that question falls into one of these 3 categories: roles, values, and characteristics. Each of these categories is complex and variable, so let's determine a common definition for each of them. First, we have roles. Roles, for the purposes of this speech, are the parts one plays in relation to others. Roles can be formal, such as my roles as Student Senate Treasurer and Dragon Ambassador, or informal, like my roles as daughter, sister, and girlfriend. The second category, values, are what one sees as important or prioritizes. These can be tangible or intangible. So tangible values include things like pets, money, or heirlooms, while intangible values include non-physical qualities like honesty, compassion, or faith. Values can also be both internal and external. Perhaps you value courage in others and intelligence in yourself. This impacts the people you choose to surround yourself with, the social groups you seek out, and the way you interact with others. Characteristics, the third category, is generally where we have the least control. They include qualities like our national origin, race, gender identity, sexual orientation, and family composition. Characteristics tend to be the most talked about aspect of identity, and as such, tend to be what people think of as their entire identity. While these elements are important and can have major impacts on how we experience society, as we've heard tonight, they're not my point of focus today. So these categories are the basis for harnessing your power over your identity: roles, values, and characteristics. Roles tend to be the easiest to change. They take the least commitment to alter. For example, if I no longer like my role as a student, I can simply stop taking classes. Of course, there are consequences to that action. I no longer get my degree, for one, and I stop receiving the benefits of being a student, like access to the wellness center or the student discount I get on my car insurance. But I can make that decision to stop going to class at any time. The same concept applies to jobs, friendships and romantic relationships, club memberships, and so on. However, some roles are more difficult to change, such as my roles as a sister and daughter. There is an element of inevitability to these roles. For example, I will always be someone's child, but I can alter the way I fulfill these roles. I can choose to make them larger or smaller parts of my identity by altering how much I interact within them, performing activities like calling my mom or going to visit my siblings. I can also change how much I value these roles as a part of my life. If I feel like being a sister is important to me, I associate my identity more with that role. Which brings me to my next category, values. Values take longer to change, but a successful change of your values can present a deeper and more meaningful alteration of your identity than changing roles. When you change what you value externally, you begin to seek out different types of roles and opportunities. For example, if you successfully shift what you value in your career from being money and power to being the ability to make a change or impact someone's life, you might change the types of jobs you're looking for, the keywords that get your attention in job postings, and even the sorts of organizations you consider for employment. Looking internally and shifting what you value about yourself from being intelligence per se to compassion and empathy can impact the way you interact with others across every role you occupy. Finally, we have characteristics. While some characteristics, such as our national origin, the families we were born into, and our race, can't be changed, there are some characteristics we have control over. Many characteristics are based around familial or societal norms and belief systems. For example, maybe you're genetically female and identify as a woman because that is the societal norm, and you've never thought to question it. Maybe, like me, you were brought up in a household with certain faith-based beliefs. As a younger person, I attended church services and confirmation classes because I was raised in a family that identified as Christian. I began to question this faith system in my early teenage years and eventually discovered that I didn't identify as a Christian. I knew that I would have to forge an identity separate from the central beliefs of those around me. But I still attended church with my family because it was expected of me. As an adult, the freedom to find my own belief systems has been liberating and served as a fundamental shift in my identity. Changes to our religion or spirituality, sexual orientation, and gender identity can shift as we grow, learn more about ourselves, and discover what identities feel right to each of us. So while these changes undoubtedly take the biggest investment, from the amount of self-discovery they require to the actualization of these aspects of our identities, they also tend to have the biggest impact on our daily lives. These can be incredibly difficult and wildly important transformations. Changes to these aspects of our identities are often the key to feeling like our truest selves. So, what does my 10-year challenge look like? How did I harness my power over my identity, and who did I become? I guess we'll never find out. Oh. Here it is. I've changed my roles the most, becoming a student leader in multiple capacities, a social worker, and a soon-to-be college graduate. But I've also changed my values, shifting away from only valuing my own resilience. When I was younger, I thought the only admirable thing about me was that I could take a hit and get back up again. While I do still value this, and I see its importance, I've expanded my internal values to include things like leadership, compassion, and understanding. This has shifted how I interact with others, allowing me to be open and nurturing rather than constantly guarded. I've even changed some of my characteristics. And through these changes, I've slowly become someone that I'm proud of, my own self, with an identity of my own creation. I won't pretend this was easy. It took the better part of a decade and immeasurable growing pains. But living as someone I chose to become is the most gratifying, freeing feeling I could describe. It's the difference between the opportunity to greet each new day and the obligation to wake up every morning. So, if I can leave you with one question from my talk tonight, I'd like it to be this. Who do you want to be in 10 years' time? And how can you start becoming that you of tomorrow, your truest self, tonight?